So Francisco is joining us today on the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Francisco, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, well, good talk.
You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm Kyle Bryant.
And I'm Sean Baumsart. Together, we're navigating life with disability. All right, welcome. This is episode 44, and you are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. In case you skipped that intro, this is just a reminder that this is Sean and Kyle, the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. And we're excited today. We're bringing you a bit of a sort of a first-time exclusive story. Last year, we had David Fagenbaum on the podcast, and you might remember his story of struggling or dealing with Castleman's disease. Anyway, he helped us meet a friend of his who at the time was knee-deep in the process of recovering from a spinal cord injury and completing his emergency medicine residency program.
Francisco Sanchez was kind enough to join us on the phone to talk openly about his accident, the recovery, and all of the experiences along the way. He shared this in hopes that he can relate to others who might be dealing with a similar situation. Now, we had some minor difficulties with this particular recording because of Sean, so we decided to edit some of the things out.
Totally my fault.
It's all your fault, man. So we decided to edit all those things out to produce a clean episode for you to talk about. So instead of our usual beginning and gradual, kind of get to know you approach, you'll notice that I jump right into the effects the spinal cord injury had on Francisco and his life.
It makes it sound like Kyle just wasn't playing around. He was like, let's just get right to it.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we do around here, dude.
But it makes the interview in this episode a little more interesting. You just jump right in, right?
There we are.
Yes. So anyway, before we play that interview with Francisco, we wanted to give you an idea of the man himself. So let me just tell you a few things about him. That way you have a nice little mental picture going into it. Francisco grew up near Boston. He went on to attend Duke University, and then after that went to med school at the University of Pennsylvania. After completing med school, he spent a year in Brazil doing some research, and according to him, a lot of sightseeing, and I think the word he used was quote-unquote Partying? But anyway, he had accomplished quite a bit, went on to Brazil for a year, came back. He was about a month into his intern year for emergency medicine when he was involved in a motorcycle accident and unfortunately experienced a complete transection of his spinal cord at the mid-thoracic level, paralyzing him from the chest down, and this also shattered his right hand. He underwent several surgeries for both his spine and his hand, and about 4 months of rehab before he actually returned to medicine and continued his residency. In fact, at the time of this recording, so it's been just a couple weeks, Francisco was only 13 shifts away from completing residency and being the first person to do so after a spinal cord injury.
I think it's just such an amazing story that we had the absolute privilege to record. So we are absolutely honored to chat with Francisco, and we're touched by his story, his tenacity and will to move forward despite such insurmountable odds, and his willingness to share with other people in hopes that it will improve their lives. We hope you enjoy hearing from Francisco and you find encouragement in whatever circumstance you're living through right now. We realize that some circumstances may never change, but how we react to those circumstances and how we live beyond them is what is up to us. So, without further ado, here is our conversation with Francisco Sanchez. So, real quick, let's back up a little bit. Do you mind detailing, just giving the listeners a picture of what actually happened? Like, what was the effect on your body and on your life?
So, so I guess if you back up, I was, 6'1", like 220-pound guy, and afterwards, after this, transection of my spinal cord at the T5, T6 level, which is about right kind of below my nipples, I became paralyzed at that level, which, I had obviously full function of my arms and chest, but I don't have any. I have maybe half of an ab on my left side, so I don't have any core. So if I lean forward, I kind of tip over. So that was kind of the biggest. That was one of the biggest difficulties I faced, trying to find ways to position myself when I'm doing procedures, like sewing someone's cut up or putting in IVs and things like that, where I'm not tipping over or falling into the patient.
Yeah.
And then my right hand was like completely destroyed, but I had this awesome surgeon basically put it back together with nails and plates. And I'm gonna go climbing later today, and my left hand actually has like less strength sometimes than my right hand.
Your med school was at Penn, and then they placed you in a hospital for residency? I don't know how that worked, how the whole program works.
So at the end of med school, you enter into a match, basically, where you rank programs and they rank you, and basically when it's like you get into the program that you match the highest that rank you to match.
So do they use an app for that, like Tinder? Is that how you match, or is there a
basically there's a lot of swiping going on.
Just for reference, Francisco, we got connected through Dr. David Fagenbaum, and he was on the show in episode 19. One of my favorite interviews so far, and probably one of our most listened to episodes. An incredible guy. My assumption is you're somewhere around the same age as him. Is that true? Like, what's your connection with David? And for a reference sake, maybe how do you guys know each other, and what's your friendship level?
David is one of my closest and dearest friends. We met in medical school. We always talk about how we romantically met at the gym. I had some weights. They were about 80 pounds, and I was doing shoulder press. And I was looking around the gym, and I was thinking, who's big enough to help me spot these weights? And he was talking, and he always tells me, he's like, yeah, this really sweaty, hairy guy came up to me and was like, can you help me spot these weights?
Your eyes met, and it was magic.
It was just pure magic from then on. Yeah,
I'll spot you.
I'll spot you, bud. And we never looked back. Now, Dave was a really, really close friend of mine during school, and I was sort of a witness to him getting sick. And at first, we didn't really know what was going on. I was really, really scared, and it was not a stretch to think that that he was going to die at one point.
Mm-hmm.
It was just it speaks lengths to his strength and to everything that he went through. It was funny. Every time I was in rehab and I was, they were trying to get me to do some exercise or trying to get me to do something, get up and move around. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And my dad would always go, what would Feigenbaum do? What would Feigenbaum do? And I was like, God damn it. This guy is haunting me.
Nice.
I know. He's just, everyone told me, they're like, you're going to go on this podcast and, your story's going to stink compared to his.
Not at all.
So, do you still work out in the gym a lot, just to keep yourself in shape?
I do. I try to go to the gym a few times a week. I'm trying to mix it up a little bit by doing I go rowing.
Okay.
It's like basically arms and trunk only rowing on the river. Today I'm going to go climbing, which is, most people when they climb, it's like a nice, elegant, thoughtful process of moving your arms and legs up the wall. And whereas I just very ugly at brute strength,
Yeah.
40 pull-ups basically.
Of just your arms.
Just arms.
You talked about, David Feigenbaum and others as well, like the chairs of your department in med school, that they were your fierce supporters. And so oftentimes I think people have, they just have this X factor, right? And it sounds like you may have had some of that. And it's like, all right, I'm going to complete this no matter what. What are the factors that helped you get through everything?
I've always been kind of a stubborn person, but I don't entertain any fantasies that I would have gotten through this if it wasn't for my family, who my mom and dad, who are both physicians, essentially took a fair amount of time off of work periodically to basically become my best nurses. My younger brother, who's a couple of years younger than me, became my personal aide for half. And then the people I work with, I had a program director for my residency program who, it would have been significantly easier for him just to be like, listen, there's a reason why there's never been a resident to complete residency who's had a spinal cord injury. It's never happened. And I think I'm still, I haven't graduated yet, but I think it's still the only one. And, it would have been far easier just to say, listen, this was a great idea. It was, we gave it the old college try, but, let's just move on. But, he, had a lot of courage to do this, and he was adamant that if there was any program, they could do it. But, the Harvard affiliated emergency residency program where I go was going to be the one to do it. And then I had a lot of other doctors I worked with who were just like, listen, dude, we're going to get you through this. you can do whatever you want afterwards, but finish this.
Yeah,
I think that was.
I think it probably speaks a lot to your own character. When somebody's up against spinal cord injury and other people in their life are saying you can still help in the emergency room, that probably tells me you're a pretty darn good doctor. And all you need are a good set of hands in your brain. Like that's pretty impressive, and it's super encouraging that people said, hey, you know what? Just because you're paralyzed from the chest down isn't going to make you less.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of residents who first start, I thought I was a lot better of a doctor than I really was. So when I went back, I was really hyper focused on the sort of the physical aspects of my job, the procedures and things like that. But what I kind of should have been focusing more on was just how much is just mental and how much of it is sort of intellectual.
You're probably doing more than you thought you would at one point, right? You said you thought you might quit at one point, but then you push through it and find out that those assumptions actually aren't true, and that you can do it. And it probably gives you a lot of confidence moving forward, knowing that you did this despite all your challenges.
To be frank, there was a lot of people who were basically thought that I shouldn't complete residency, that having a resident with a spinal cord injury was dangerous for the patient, and that it was asking sort of too much of me. And I almost derived as much motivation from the people who thought that I wasn't going to be able to complete residency, to sort of prove them wrong. And it's something that I definitely relish the support I got from people throughout residency, but I also savor, I'll occasionally bump into some folks in the hospital who I know were not my fiercest supporters, and just be like, yeah, I'm finishing up in a couple of weeks,
And you want to be
nice
like, in your face, dude.
Yeah. I'm having this awesome graduation party and you can't come. Have you encountered any resistance or hesitation from the patients you have served? I assume when you roll into a room, that probably catches people off guard, maybe. What has that experience been like for you?
What's really interesting is that when I first had my injury, I would roll into the rooms and I was kind of like not, I wasn't great at wheeling around. I'd like bump into doors, and I wasn't very slick coming into the room. So it kind of drew attention to myself, and people would often ask, and they were always polite about it, and they'd be like, "Oh, how'd you get injured? Is this permanent? What's going on?" And I found that throughout the years now, I almost never get any questions about it. And when I do, I'm almost kind of taken off guard. I don't know what to say. I used to have like sort of these, or these like catchphrases I would just say just because, I need something to say every time to people. And now when people ask me, I don't even know what to say because I don't get it anymore. I think it's probably because I kind of like fly in quickly, say hello. Like if anything, I'll be like, slow down. I'm kind of moving around the department fast. But about the thing about patient safety, also wanted to get back to it. That was something that I was actually worried about initially, in particular when we have to do a month of delivering babies. And I I was really worried I was going to drop a baby when it came out, just because like of the balance and everything. And so I kind of like jerry-rigged my chair to make sure I was very secure in there. I was not going to fall out. And one of the things was also gowning up to make sure any sort of fluid got all over me. And that was one of the things that I had sort of the most anxiety about, but then in the end turned out to be totally fine. Well, yeah, it was certainly something that I thought about, and other people did too.
I mean, I can assume that it was probably fine because you took such precautions. Like, you were a little freaked out about it, so you took care of it and made things happen. And it sounds like that's what you've been doing the whole time.
Going back, Francisco, earlier in the recording, you talked about how you're 13 shifts away from completing your residency. What does life look like after those 13 shifts? Like, where do you see yourself 6 months from now, or even 12 months?
Well, so I finished residency in 13 shifts. I'm a fourth-year resident now, so I'm essentially working as a attending physician, which is I basically supervise younger residents, my junior residents. And I'm going to be taking a job in the community, Cambridge Health Alliance, which is just over the river in Cambridge. And I'll be working at 3 different hospitals. I'll be, primarily seeing my own patients, but I'll also be occasionally supervising some residents and some medical students. I'll occasionally be doing some work with the Harvard Medical School, doing some teaching. And now I hope to be able to sort of teach these procedures from my position to kind of encourage medical students with some sort of disability who, normally wouldn't think of going into a field like emergency medicine. Hopefully this would kind of encourage them to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. You said you're the first person to complete residency, in 13 shifts, as somebody with a spinal cord injury. And, to pay it forward, that's what it's all about. And to encourage other people who might be in a similar situation to keep going and don't give up. So, that's a big part of what this podcast is all about. And I respect that so much.
In our dialogue leading up to the phone call, and even David Feigenbaum had mentioned, this is, you're sort of in the middle still of your recovery and completing residency. And as we've mentioned, you're not too far away. The light is at the end of the tunnel. Yet you've never talked publicly like this. You've never shared about your injury and what you've gone through to complete the process of becoming a doctor. Do you mind sharing maybe, first of all, it's an honor for Kyle and I to have you on the phone today and to be able to pick your brain and hear the story from your own perspective. So thank you so much for allowing us to share in this journey with you and for allowing our listeners to come along for the ride. Do you mind sharing a little bit? Are you generally a pretty quiet, private person, or is there's something bigger or something different that plays into you not really talking publicly about your experiences?
Well, I think that if you were to ask the folks that know me if I were a quiet person, they would probably laugh. I think that my girlfriend would hope I was more of a quiet person than I am. High class. No, I to be honest, I didn't really feel comfortable talking about this. I mean, I'm not sure if I still feel feel comfortable doing this. But I think part of it was that there was a lot of I guess what would the word be? It was still sort of an unknown whether I would be able to finish residency and get through all of this. It was not sort of a foregone conclusion, and part of it was I didn't feel comfortable speaking about this until I was kind of on my way to finishing residency. And during the first few years of residency, especially with how tough it can be, I didn't feel like I was able to talk about it until I was kind of on my way to finishing. But now that I am, I think that I do feel almost sort of a sense of responsibility to maybe talk about this some more, in case there are folks out there who are going through a similar experience. There actually was recently a emergency physician who did suffer a spinal cord injury, and a friend of a friend put him in contact with me, and I was able to sort of tell him how I do some of the procedures that I do, and I think that I would hope that he said that they've been helpful as he has gone back to work also. He's a awesome guy, and he's made a lot of progress. And doing that has kind of shown me that there's probably a lot of benefits people can get hearing about some of the difficulties that I went through, and hopefully that me telling some of my story can make their journey a little less arduous.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a principle in life, no matter what is going on, when other people see that somebody else can do it, they're inspired. Well, if that guy can do it, then I'm gonna give it a shot. So I love that you are wanting to, you say you almost feel a responsibility to encourage other people to give it a shot. It might be a little bit different. They might figure something out a little bit differently, but to not give up on a career choice or on certain aspects of life, I think is incredible. A very powerful perspective.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's even from a inspirational standpoint, but sometimes I've looked at things that I didn't think I'd be able to do, and then you see someone be able to do it, and you're like, oh, that's the way to do it. And I just hadn't thought about it that way. And I was like, oh, cool. So I hope that, with some of the procedures especially, that people don't traditionally think of as, that someone with a spinal cord injury would be able to do. I hope that, that I can kind of change the perspective and understanding behind that.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Sean.
Well, just hearing you, talk about procedures, I think about probably all the babies you delivered during that 1 month program. I'm willing to bet none of those mothers say, "Oh, I wish my doctor wasn't in a chair." Like, I'm sure they love you, and they are so happy you were there and you helped them get through birth. And I think to them, and probably a lot of your patients, they don't really care what life is like for you. You were a source of strength and a source of knowledge and a source of help, and that's all that matters. So I think a lot of people are going to be able to lean on that, and like you said, say, "Oh, you know what? I just need to do it this way, and I can do it. So here we go. Buckle up.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
you know, you before you were talking about seeing someone else do whatever, and maybe I can do that too. And you know, I think one of the reasons that Sean and I are so honored to have you on today is because you're in a position where you're the first one to do a lot of this stuff. Like, there isn't someone to look at and go, oh, maybe I should try it that way. And so you're in there figuring stuff out and paving the way for others. Like, I think that's really amazing. And I can tell that you don't take that lightly, and that, you know, you're going to continue paying it forward. So I love that. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So, Francisco, one last question. We want to know your ultimate advice. If you were able to give the commencement speech at University of Pennsylvania to medical students, what are some of the things that you might say?
Having a sort of long-term goals are really, really important, but I think just kind of focusing on the task in front of you is a lot of how I got through residency. I kind of understood it was going to be a long and along a difficult road, but I tried not to get bogged down in that and just try to focus on the task at hand. And I think it's also not unreasonable to be upset sometimes and say, hey, this isn't fair, and this stuff does hurt, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to get through with it. And to be able to kind of share those feelings with the people around you that love you, whether it's your close friends or your family or your partner, and just to be open about those things. I think that's also a very important thing that I wish I had done a little bit more of.
That's beautiful. I love that. Nice. Well, I think that is an incredible note to end on. And Francisco, once again, we just thank you so much for giving us your time here. And we know that your story is reaching people that need to hear it and that need the encouragement to keep going when things get tough. We see that you certainly did, and you will continue to do so. So thank you for everything you're doing and for sharing your story with us here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right.
That's good. Good job, guys. I love it. I'm excited about this.
Oh my God. Feigenbaum probably sounded so much better than me. I'm dreading this.
He's totally going to compare.
Like, you got to make Feigenbaum. I know he is. He's going to tell me I'm always going to be better than you. What would?
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Find us online at twodisableddudes.com, and please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts.
We'd like to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins, who also composed the music.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.